Welcome to the series Oral History Without Fears. This is a series that I'm doing for my Gavilan College students to help them understand the process of doing an oral history. This will be a series of 5 short videos that you can come back to at any time. You can watch more than once. They're to help with every step of the way, and particularly they're to help allay any anxiety or fear you have. Oral history is very doable, and I'd like you to get excited and ready to go, but not to be worried or fearful about it. Also, this actual video and all of the other 4 videos will be part of a homework assignment, and I'll ask you to outline each video, and I'll give you little signposts along the way so that you'll practice your outlining skills as you're learning more about oral history. So go ahead and get your pencil and paper so that you can outline. And in this video, we're going to discuss why would somebody do oral history besides that they want the grade, and what you can expect on this assignment. So first, in order to explain that, I have to talk about what is oral history. Then I'll talk about why I assign it, and then we'll discuss very specifically what this assignment will look like from your point of view in terms of what you're going to be doing. So let's start with what is oral history, first of all. So I'm going to define oral history by talking in terms of 3 main points. Oral history is a very important methodology for any historian to gather information using live informants who answer interview questions in a recordable format. That can be audio or video, but it's recordable. B, the main purpose of oral history is to record people's voices and their stories so that those can be available to future researchers, family members, or interested parties. There are 3 ways that those recordings can be organized. Firstly, sometimes people do very specific focused oral histories. Say that you have a famous uncle and somebody's writing a biography of that uncle. They'll come to you and all they really want to hear from you is about your uncle and your relationship to your uncle, your memories of your uncle. They're not looking at your whole life. Or maybe you were at UC Berkeley in the 1960s and somebody just wants to know what the experience was on Sproul Plaza in 1964 during the summer. Or perhaps you were at the birth of Silicon Valley, you worked at Apple Computers in 1980. That would be a very specific piece of your life that somebody would want. So that's one very focused way to do an oral history. But secondly, some oral histories look at somebody's whole life story, partly because maybe they're of great interest simply because they're an important person, or maybe they were a very important part for a long time of something historically significant, or possibly they were related to somebody and had a long ongoing relationship because that was significant. So those can be very long oral histories, and they don't particularly have a focus. And then the third option is the one that in my classes we'll do most often, a combination of the specific, where you look at a couple of themes, but also you're looking generally at the whole life, so that you're kind of doing both the general and the specific. Those are all options. But C, the whole point of this, why do oral history and what is it, is to make the stories available for the future. And in historians' language, we call that end use. So there are 4 different possible end uses for most oral histories, and yours may be used in more than one. So the first and probably most common is that academic libraries often archive oral histories, and often by subject. For example, the history of Silicon Valley or the history of the founding of San Francisco State University. Those would be archivable oral histories. Secondly, sometimes people archive oral histories on the web so that they're searchable by anybody, and they're available pretty generally to anybody who can get on a computer. Thirdly, sometimes there are closed archives that specific organizations such as a corporation or possibly the Mormon Church hold, and for those you would need special permission or membership in that organization to get access to the history. And then fourth and finally, but not less importantly, are family archives. Many families keep historical information, and the oral history that you do, if you worked with a family member, may well be an important part of such an archive. So all of those are legitimate end uses for oral history. My second big point in this video is why do oral history? And hopefully the above starts to suggest some of the reasons why people find oral history appealing, but I'll add 5 more. So if you're outlining, I'm going to give you 5 other reasons. maybe the most important is that the human side of any story is what we all enjoy learning from. That's what makes it really interesting. What was it like to march on Washington in 1963 with African American and European American and all sorts of others all together? What was that like? It was a first experience for many people. So how did people experience that? Or what was it like to be the first woman to join a police force in South Dakota? Maybe that was a good experience, or maybe it wasn't, but it's history that's worth preserving. Or what was it like to raise a family in the 1970s? A lot was changing in the United States in the 1970s, and raising a family was a big locus of change. So you want the human side of those stories. Another reason to do oral history, B, is that some of these things might be things that historians aren't writing about. Maybe they're not aware of them. Maybe you're the one who's going to kind of surface this set of issues for the rest of the world. Or maybe, which may be more common, historians aren't interested. For many years, traditional historians who were successful in academia, for example, didn't really want to hear about women's lives. They found them trivial. Oh, we don't really want to talk about housework. But in housework is a whole microcosm of how family and society functions. So you may be adding to a store of knowledge that society really needs. C, future historians might be interested. Who knew that my college class, the class of 1982, would graduate and become Silicon Valley millionaires, the people who established Silicon Valley? I didn't know that. They were just a bunch of kind of geeky guys at the time, but they've raised more money for my college than anybody else far and away, that particular class of 1982. So now historians are actually interested in looking back and talking to some of those people. So you may not know everything that you're part of, and it may become more important later. D, another reason to do oral history is that future family members will almost certainly be interested in knowing what their ancestors thought and how they experienced life. And finally, E, coming back to the academic reason to do oral history, it's very good for history students to practice history by doing a modest oral history. You will learn a lot of skills. Those include, and now I'm just going to list a bunch of skills: planning, interviewing skills, questioning skills, contextualization, which is something that I'll actually teach in class, historical reasoning, historical connection making, organizing so that you can have a nice flow of your ideas, researching, evaluating research, outlining, which is something that you're already starting to practice on this video, substantiating your evidence, and of course, writing and possibly publishing an oral history. These are very useful skills. So, third big point, how are you going to do this? What can you expect in doing this assignment? And here, I have 10 steps that I'm going to outline that will help you understand what I'm going to be asking of you in the coming weeks. So, here we go. I'm going to use ABC. So A, this assignment in most of my classes is 30 to 40% of your course grade, and that's going to represent hard work on your part. That's a lot of your course grade. That's a lot of work. There's no shortcut. There's no way around the work if you want to get a passing grade. So you expect that you're going to work. That's one expectation you should definitely have. B, this is another one of those incremental assignments that I give in which every piece counts. And if you leave an important piece out, it'll really mess you up with a final grade. So it's required, it counts for a lot, and it's also incremental. So make sure that you're on top of those incremental deadlines. C, what else can you expect? There are 5 videos that are going to help you do everything and on time. And of course, this is the first one. Watch them. I will give one-time help in class on most of the skills that you will need. Be there. I will give extensive help during office hours and rough draft clinics. Come. And I will give some help within reasonable limits via email. But sometimes what you need is not something we can do via email. For example, if you're trying to select your themes for research, that's hard to do via email because we have to sit down and you have to tell me, what the person said and what you're thinking and what you're interested in. And that's a lot of email back and forth that I usually just say, let's talk, come to my office hours. So you'll get some email support, but don't push deadlines or you may not get an answer in time, and don't expect that we can do everything by email. Sometimes face-to-face really works better. So D, here's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be selecting an appropriate informant to interview with my help and turning in the name. Then you're going to be preparing for and doing an unrecorded preliminary interview that will help you understand the person's life overall, and that will start to reveal some important themes that you may choose to research. They need to be interesting for you, and then they also have to want to research or talk about these themes further, but hopefully you'll find those themes. Then you choose 2 of those themes that are researchable, historical, and interesting so that you can do extensive research on those. Fourthly, you're going to be developing questions based on these themes and how they intersect with your informant's or your person's history. Fifthly, you're going to draft your research into a very rough draft before you go on to number 6, do interviews with your informant for at least 2 hours of recorded material on the person's life in general, and then also on the 2 themes that you've already researched. So you've got good questions about those themes. 7th, and maybe most challenging for most students, is the way that you're going to merge those interview materials in your paper with your research materials so that you're going to create a kind of a weaving of the larger history with your informant's life. Number 8, you're going to do all that. Then you're going to use proper MLA style, proper writing conventions, good style, and good grammar to complete your research paper in its writing phase. Number 9, you're going to learn how to explain and get signatures on basic oral history paperwork, which in this case, in this class, will be an informed consent form and a deed of gift form. And then lastly but not least, you're possibly going to submit your paper and your audio for archiving through the Gavilan College Library, which runs a community oral history archive. And we would love to have you add your paper to others so that it becomes a better record of our time using your information and the information that has been gathered by other students. So that's it for this video. Why oral history and what should I expect? Be sure to watch the very important next video, number 2 in the series, on preliminary interviews.